It's a pleasure to have you join us on another episode of the program. I am Ogechukwu Okekwe. The federal government of Nigeria has threatened that it will sue hospitals that refuse to treat patients who are rushed in for emergency treatment. The Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy Ohayaye, issued a warning at the Unlock Grants Award event in Abuja. Earlier this year, the Federal Ministry of Health was given a mandate by the House of Representatives to take firm action against hospitals and healthcare facilities that refuse to treat accident or gunshot victims without obtaining a police report. Kennedy, however, said that federal government hospitals would henceforth be required to place signs outside their doors that reads, "No more rejection of emergency patients." The Nigerian Red Cross Society has said that it would continue to render selfless, impartial humanitarian services to all Nigerians irrespective of tribe, region, or creed. Plateau State Chapter Secretary of the Nigerian Red Cross Society, Nuruddin Magaji, gave the assurance at the closing of 10 days of training of another set of 25 health professionals in the state. The Nigerian Red Cross Society, in collaboration with the United Nations Population Fund, have in the past 20 days trained nurses, midwives on how to respond to basic reproductive, maternal and child care during emergencies in Plateau State. At the closing event, Magaji said in line with the core principle of the Red Cross, they would continue to put in their best for God and humanity. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, has launched the National Geometric Sequencing Syndicate that aimed at enhancing the nation's public health infrastructure. Director General of the NCDC, Jide Idris, said the initiative will also fortify our health security, being the mandate of NCDC, and position Nigeria as a strategic geometric research hub in the global south. Jide noted that regulation governing the sharing of geometric surveillance data outside Nigeria's jurisdiction has been inadequate, particularly with the private sector and academia. He said the gap has resulted in significant losses of data and opportunity for national benefits. We'll go on a short break, but don't go away. Welcome back. Arthritis is the swelling and tenderness of one or more joints. The main symptoms of arthritis are joint pain and stiffness, which typically worsens with age. The word arthritis means joint inflammation. However, inflammation may also affect the tendons and ligaments surrounding the joints. The symptoms can develop gradually or suddenly and may impair a person's ability to perform everyday tasks. Arthritis affects 58.5 million adults in the United States, which equals about 1 in 4 persons. It is more common among adults aged 65 years or older. However, it can affect people of all ages, including children. Well, joining me on the program to discuss further is Sam Ibeneme, Professor in Neurophysiotherapy. Thank you for joining me on the program, Doctor. Arthritis, which we know is the swelling and tenderness of one or more joints in the body. Can you explain more on this and also give us more details on the types and explain their differences?
Well, arthritis, as you know, is a very broad term that refers to over 100 conditions. And these conditions have similarities. The common pattern of presentation of these conditions is joint stiffness, pain, and swelling. In the actual sense, arthritis have the major types that we are used to. We have osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, gout arthritis, and the likes of them. In the active sense, there are some differences in this group of arthritis, including what we also call the psoriatic arthritis. When you're looking at osteoarthritis, essentially it occurs commonly in older adults, And it has a result of wear and tear that happens at the joint. The joints, the bones of the joint normally have a lining covering them, which we call the cartilage. With excessive wear and tear at these joints, they begin to wear off, and then you begin to have the bones beginning to touch one another, and then that triggers pain and inflammation. The lubricating, cartilages, once they are eroded through excessive wear and tear, then the symptoms of arthritis, begins to set in. And this is common, osteoarthritis is common in older adults. Then we have another type of arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis.
So what would you say are the early symptoms or tests required to confirm that one has arthritis?
Well, different types of arthritis have different presentations. Osteoarthritis is by its nature insidious in nature. That is, it comes up and builds up slowly. It comes on slowly. It doesn't happen suddenly. So it gives some time for you to make adjustments to address the risk factors, in that circumstance and situation. But it presents, like I have mentioned, with joint pain, stiffness of the joint, and difficulty in mobility, which eventually begins to creep in. And if these symptoms, once they begin to appear, if they are not addressed, they are progressive in nature until they finally damage the joint itself. Because once the cartilages that line up the bones of the joint are destroyed, then the bones will begin to touch themselves and wear and tear over each other, triggering pain and inflammation. And so you begin to see the surrounding structures and tissues also damaged progressively. You present inflammation with redness, soreness, tenderness around those areas. And the areas affected are warm to touch. And so, in terms of mobility, there is always disability that comes with it. You're not able to do the things you used to do, and your joints are not able to, move through the entire range of motion like they normally do without feeling pain. In some situations, even there is a limitation in the joint range of motion, and this is also associated with so much pain and discomfort.
So the different symptoms of arthritis you mentioned, do they progress over time?
Yes, these symptoms, they progress over time, especially if the factors that bring them about are not addressed. For instance, if you're looking at something like gout arthritis, one of the major causes of gout arthritis is lifestyle related. The way and manner we eat and what we eat and what we're exposed to could be a predisposing trigger for the onset of gout arthritis. Those who normally take organ meat are more likely to be predisposed to gout arthritis. Those who also take things like eat more of seafood or are exposed to smoking are likely to be predisposed to gout arthritis. And also poor intake of water. Those who don't drink water the way they should. So poor hydration can lead to a buildup of uric acid in the body, which predisposes to gout arthritis. There are some disease conditions also that can predispose to that, like kidney failure, and where the kidney, under a stress, the metabolites from the body, thereby, allowing for a buildup of uric acid in the system. It could also happen in people who are obese. Because in people who are obese, the kidney doesn't function the way it should. And excretion, is therefore limited, and inflammation is also increased in those well-being. All these can also, predispose to gout arthritis. So there are a lot of environmental factors. There are a lot of lifestyle-related factors, and there are also medication-related factors. Taking antibiotics can predispose to gout arthritis over time. And that is why it's important to encourage our people not to self-medicate. Such antibiotics like ciprofloxacin over time can actually predispose to gout arthritis. So there are a lot of situations that we have in our environment that will predispose people to these various forms of arthritis. And when you are looking at something like rheumatoid arthritis, one of the predisposing factors or triggers also is smoking. Smoking can trigger that and expose because some of these hereditary factors are in the system, they're only there and they're latent in nature, but they can be triggered, they can be activated. And when that happens, you begin to, experience things like this. And so we must be very mindful of how we handle symptoms of different types of arthritis when we see them. And we don't really need to wait for them, to happen or to be present before we begin to take the necessary action. Because one important thing about arthritis generally is that both the adults, both the youth, both and children are liable. They are predisposed to arthritis. Arthritis can occur, in these various age categories. And so no one can say that their age category is exempted and therefore caution must be taken appropriately. And when these symptoms begin to appear, that is the more reason why interventions should be made or help should be sought in the right places. There is no reason why we should begin to consult with quacks or those who are not experts in the field. Because when we do that, we complicate the situation the more. So people are encouraged to seek for help and to also have the habit of going for regular medical checks. Because if you have that habit of regular medical checks, it's possible that in the course of your regular medical checkup, these factors that you trigger them could be noticed or observed, or changes that are associated, or the presence of these factors for some of these arthritis are identified and then tackled early enough before they become very visible and then becomes more difficult to manage.
Arthritis seems to be a common sickness, particularly for the older persons. Also, are there any long-term illness or complication arthritis can cause?
Well, yes, arthritis is associated to some extent with older adults. It's common among them, but not all types of arthritis. But the reason why we make statements like that is because of the commonest type, which is the osteoarthritis. It is much more common among older adults because one of the risk factors or the causative factors is actually aging. So aging tends to, predispose people to osteoarthritis. Remember, I did mention that osteoarthritis arises from wear and tear of the cartilages of the joint. So it means that when you keep having wear and tear in the joint as you move around activities of daily living, especially when they are excessive or done in the wrong posture, or when you engage in high impact activities that load the joint, that is, that put pressure on the joint more than they should. Over time, you are likely to end up having osteoarthritis. So arthritis is common among the elderly if you are referring to osteoarthritis. Otherwise, other types of arthritis can occur in individuals of all ages. Even osteoarthritis can occur at much younger age, depending on how um, the wear and tear has happened in the joint. So, and it can actually predispose to a lot of complications. Normally, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, the tendency that you could also have challenges with the heart and some other parts of the body also have, because it's an autoimmune disease which attacks literally the cells of the body as well. So sometimes the heart is also attacked, the valves of the heart and so on. And then the joints, the cartilages are also attacked and they are, damaged. And this damage can become permanent if not addressed on time. Complications therefore can arise. And the most common, like I did mention before, is loss of bone mass, or what we call osteoporosis. Is one of the complications associated with osteoarthritis. We have done a lot of studies which also have demonstrated that when you have osteoporosis, especially in the elderly, it predisposes them to fall. It predisposes them to imbalance, walking imbalance, and that can lead to a fall. A fall for someone who already has very thin bone structure, who has, loss of bone mineral density, will definitely lead to fracture. And fractures will lead to one being bedridden or being immobilized. And immobilization, especially in the elderly, may not be so good, especially for those who may have obesity, because it can now lead to other forms of non-communicable disease that are not desirable at that age. And therefore, complications really can occur as a result of that. And in essence, most of the complications also that may arise include disability related to movement. Either they walk with some obvious forms of deformity and difficulty that pose a challenge to, being independent in activities of daily living. And those are quite very concerning, because when they begin to lose independence in performing activities of daily living, then it begins to affect the quality of life and may even affect economic independence, which is not very good for people in our time. So a lot of disabilities can occur and arise as a result of, uh, progressive damage inflicted by osteoarthritis, depending on the type of osteoarthritis. And so it's better to prevent them from happening than trying to intervene to stop the progression, because it may be difficult in some cases to do that. You may limit it, you may mitigate it, you may, slow down the pace of its progression using different type of disease modifying medication or precision medicine, or what we also know as molecular engineering or genetic engineering and molecular intervention that target specific molecules, especially the pro-inflammatory molecules or the autoimmune system, depending on which part is involved. You can actually slow down these things, but eventually you may not be able to stop it. So prevention is far much better than cure, and understanding That the moment you have a family history of someone who has arthritis of any type, you should be concerned and you should take much more precaution. And their lifestyle, therefore, must have to change, especially engaging in drinking of alcohol and smoking. Beer, drinking beer is a very, very, you know, important and clinical factor, that predisposes to something like gout arthritis. And I have also mentioned, smoking. Gout arthritis is more or less a diet-related type of arthritis because most of the things you eat contribute significantly to it, apart from genetics, which is already very well established. So these are very important things that and also your lifestyle, including lack of physical exercises or engagement in physical activity. So the motorized, um, tendency, the motorized activities of daily living, a shift from manual labor intensive to motorized or automated activities of daily living, which is common now, especially in developing countries, is not so helpful. And therefore, we expect that except we begin to readjust our lifestyle and we are more engaged in physical activities that are very constructive and that are artistic in nature, that are structured in the way they are designed, then we may end up also, having an increase in the prevalence of osteoarthritis in developing countries, especially in Africa.
So oftentimes people say taking too many cold things, yeah, can also increase one's risk of arthritis. Would you say this is true?
Well, there is no scientific evidence that connects um, cold temperatures to a risk factor for arthritis. There is
Okay.
no scientific evidence to that. However, cold temperature can exacerbate the symptoms where they already have occurred. Exposure to cold temperatures, environmental drops in temperature, especially in the cold extremities, in regions of cold extremities and temperature wise, could not could actually predispose to that. To exacerbate that, they could actually amplify it. They could intensify or worsen the symptoms of arthritis, but they do not cause it. They are not a causative factor in any way. They're not a risk factor in any way.
Okay.
Like I've mentioned already, hydration is very important. So for some types of arthritis like gout arthritis, not to excrete uric acid from the system. And so if we have that notion that fluid, could intake of cold fluid could worsen it. Some people also may not want to take as much cold fluid as they should do in hot weather, and then because they feel that if they do so, they may have to, become predisposed. Say for those who do not have it already, but who are mindful. But anything that will hinder such people from getting hydrated, it should be discouraged. They should be able to hydrate themselves very, very well in order to avoid, um, things like build-up of uric acid for those who have such a family history. And but once you have arthritis of any type, it is possible that cold exposure to cold temperature could worsen it, but it doesn't mean that it is a risk factor. That is just the position of science on that issue as of now.
So lastly, are there any permanent treatment options for arthritis?
Well, there are treatment options, so I would want to use the word more like management options. Because when we talk about treatment, we talk about cure essentially. But when you manage it, you can also mitigate the effect and slow down the progression. So you can actually do that, like I have mentioned before, when you take painkillers, take anti-inflammatory drugs. Those drugs are meant to address the symptoms that are associated with arthritis. But there are also ongoing research work now that, especially in rheumatoid arthritis, that target molecular basis of rheumatoid arthritis, to see how they can knock it off from the pathway that express them and possibly, stop them advancing completely. It is possible, therefore, in terms of research, and that technology is not yet available, especially in the developing clients, and even in the advanced healthcare systems, it is not very common. But that's an ongoing conversation, an ongoing research going on, and there is hope in that area that it is possible for rheumatoid arthritis at least to target some of those molecular structures. However, when they occur, there's nothing much you can do. In very serious situations, they can go for surgery. Those affected can go for surgery to see how some of the damaged structures need repaired. And sometimes they may be using devices to assist in activities of daily living, devices and supportive devices to help cane, walking stick, and even orthoptic devices that they can wear in their arms and their legs and so on. Like I had mentioned, one particular distribution about some of these arthritis, for those that for rheumatoid arthritis, for instance, is that the one neck deformity. So the fingers are affected mainly, and so you may need some kind of devices that can help to correct the deformity, the one neck deformity. It also happens in other forms of arthritis. For something like gout arthritis, it happens mainly, the impact is mainly felt in the big toe. The big toe is the one that is mainly affected. And in such situations, you may have to use things like assistive devices like walking sticks, walking canes, and things like that. Physiotherapy is very crucial and critical. The cornerstone of rehabilitation for those who have arthritis is physiotherapy. And because it is non-pharmacologic in nature, they have available, some modalities that can mitigate pain without side effects.
Well, Sam Ibeneme, professor in neurophysiotherapy, thank you for lending your thoughts on the program. That's it on this episode of the program. Many thanks for watching. See you next time.